Hey, how's it going, guys? I hope you're keeping well. Welcome to this live where we will actually be doing a no code workshop, right? We'll be building an app live. We'll be learning a lot about, you know, various tools that you can use. I feel like software development has changed so much, right? And I'm super excited to be here today with you guys. We actually have something really exciting planned. There's a discount that is going to be available, right? So definitely stay tuned. And it's Akil Bodu, COO at Zaio, your host today, and we will be building an app together, right? So it's kind of I'm kind of going in blind right now, right? I haven't prepared for this workshop. We're going to basically be using Cursor, which is an IDE, right, for development. So it's lately there's been a lot of popularity around no-code tools, right? We're talking about Lovable, we're talking about Windsurf, and something that's also very popular is Cursor, right? And just to simplify the word IDE, it's pretty much just an environment, right, where you can actually with natural language, so you can just type words and without writing code, you can actually build applications, right? But I want to see how far we can get with this, right? The idea today is basically going to be to build a passion to profit project, right? I'm thinking that we could basically add your passions, your hobbies, and depending on what your passions and hobbies are, it will generate a business idea for you. Perhaps it's going to include what exactly the roadmap should be, the revenue projections, the pricing, and it'll give you a pretty good idea, something that's suitable for you, right? So if you are somebody who's looking to start a startup, or if you're a developer who's learning how to code in one of our boot camps, or you're just keen to just see what ideas are out there and what you can actually build, I think this might actually be a really interesting one, right? So I'm super excited to be jumping into this one. It's going to be quite fascinating. So definitely strap on, make sure that you have your cup of coffee ready, and let's actually jump into this. So I did prepare a presentation deck, right? So let me actually present I think my screen might already be here. Here we go, right? So my screen is sharing right now, and I did prepare like this presentation. So we're basically going to be going through this passion to profit generator, right, where we're going to turn hobbies into business ventures, right? So this is going to be super exciting, right? So here's kind of the roadmap of today's workshop, right? So we're going to basically go over prompt engineering. So obviously we'll also talk about the prerequisites and what setup you have to do, right? But I think a major topic that is very hot right now is prompt engineering, right? So what exactly is prompt engineering? We'll do a little bit of a crash course on that. We're going to do some ideation and planning, right? How exactly do we normally go about creating solutions, right? Obviously planning is a very important part of it, and since we're going to be using text, natural language, right, to basically talk to an AI that's going to build it for us without using code, we want to see how far we get with this, right? So that's going to be a really cool thing to do, to in order to get our prompting right, in order to speak to the AI properly, our planning needs to be on point, right? Like our if our planning is clear, we'll have the clarity to speak with the AI and get exactly what we want. Otherwise, AI has been known to create a lot of frustration, right? Like you prompt something, it builds it for you, and then you prompt another thing, and what you previously built kind of breaks. So you're just stuck in this loop where you're building something, but something else is breaking, right? So in order to avoid that, right, there's certain things that certain tips and tricks that we can use that I learned. So it's basically using certain documents in your Cursor IDE, right? And then it's also setting up Cursor rules, right? And we're going to be doing this all live, right? So I'm super excited for this. This is going to be lots of fun. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to drop it in the comments, right? And hopefully somebody from my team is going to respond to you, or if I see it in front of me, I'll try to respond myself. All right. Cool. So this is going to be really interesting. So look, the key learning outcomes is basically it's an app that's going to be powered by AI. We're not going to write code. It's going to be as no code as possible. But I want to see how far we get with that. Like, how effective is it in this day and age to build an actual working application without any code, right? Are we there yet? And I believe that in order to build AI applications very effectively, you still need to have like full stack knowledge, right? You still need to be a full stack developer to leverage all these AI tools and push production ready applications, right? So I'm really keen to test this out and see how it's going to be, and I'm really excited to take you with me on this journey. All right. So we're basically going to do some rapid prototyping, our planning phase, and we're going to learn how to integrate various APIs. So we will be using OpenAI's API to kind of do like a web search for us and use it as the brain to kind of create that idea, right? Which is created from a passion, right? So we're going to use OpenAI's API. So basically, OpenAI are the guys who basically built ChatGPT, right? So ChatGPT, I'm sure, is very popular these days. So it's going to be really cool to use their API, right? And Yeah, the prerequisites for this guy is like you don't need to know anything, right? Just make sure you have an internet connection, and if you're stuck with anything, just pop it in the chat, and we're going to try to build this thing out. Okay. All right. Cool. So I did already talk about a little bit about the idea, so I'm not going to jump too much into that. I think we can actually get into getting the prerequisite set up, right? So the first thing that you're going to have to do is make sure that you have Cursor installed, all right? So Cursor is basically an IDE, right? So if you go to Cursor, right? On their landing page right now, it's cursor.com. You can see that it's called the AI code editor, right? And it's pretty powerful. It's gained a lot of popularity, and essentially, it's something that'll help us build software a lot faster. All right. So this is definitely one of the most popular tools that we can use. It's called the AI code editor. So definitely go ahead and download this. And I already have it downloaded, so I'm not actually going to jump into that, right? Then make sure you have a stable internet connection, right? And then also just make sure you have, a coffee, right? Or like some water or something, a beverage, so that you can enjoy this process, right? We're all about good vibes. We want to enjoy what we do here. And Yeah, this is not really a necessity. You don't really need a GitHub account. I don't think we'll get that far. And you'll actually require an OpenAI API key, which is something that I will talk through as we're going through the workshop. All right. Um, so basically, let's talk a little bit about prompt engineering, right? So prompt engineering was actually something that didn't exist for a very long time, right? Or it wasn't popular until ChatGPT was launched, right? It basically became this new profession where you speak to an AI, like it's basically a set of instructions that you provide to an AI, so it creates the outcome that you want, right? So that's what prompt engineering is. It's basically giving very, very clear, concise instructions so the AI can understand what you're looking for and basically create an output that matches with the expected output, right? So basically, this is a popular framework, the Risen framework, right? And it's basically just a structure, right, that to help us craft our prompts. So you go on chat gpt and you type a prompt, right? For example, you could say that, hey, build me an app that converts passions into profits, right? That's very open ended. Like, we don't actually know what kind of output we might get by doing something like that, right? So that's why frameworks really help in structuring instructions for the AI so that we can get a more desirable output, right? So this is an example, right? So you can see R stands for role. So a lot of the times you can specify the role for the AI, right? Like, for example, in this case, SA business analyst with market expertise, right? So that is a role that we can define for the AI. So it's to say that, hey, you are going to be an SA business analyst with certain market expertise, right? Then instructions, right, is basically what you want the AI to do for you, right? So for example, this in the example of here, research viability and create plan. So this is actually not a great example, right? So the instructions that we provide, we want to be as detailed as possible, right? We can definitely use bullet points to be as detailed as possible in how we explain to the AI. So for AI to work very effectively, right, it's very important to give it sufficient context as to what you're trying to do and what you're trying to accomplish, right? So that's why it's instructions. You want to be as clear as possible. Use bullet points if it helps you structure things better. But definitely, this is giving it clear instructions, right? Steps. So this is the sequential process for execution, right? So for example, if you want to actually do like market analysis, like if you want to basically create a research report, right? You basically first have to do market analysis, you have to analyze the competitors, and then you have to create like revenue projections to just see how viable a particular idea is, right? So that is why we can specify the steps to the AI to create this final prompt. If you're uncertain about what the steps should look like, you can have a separate chat with ChatGPT, or this very popular chats that we can use today. We can use Anthropic, Gemini, OpenAI's ChatGPT. So there's a lot of different tools that we can use to chat with an AI. So you can have a separate chat. You can have all the different instructions, and then you got to outline the steps. Then the end goal, right? So what is it that you're trying to achieve? Like, what's the end goal that you want the AI to achieve for you, right? So in this case, they want an actionable business plan for a solo founder. And then narrowing it down. So this is something that happens, like you can fine tune a prompt, right? So normally narrowing happens after you've actually already created a prompt. It kind of just creates like it's known as guardrails, right? It kind of creates restrictions for the AI to be like to make sure that they're only sticking to a certain topic, right? So in this case, we want them to only focus on we want the AI to only focus on the SA market. We're only using the ZAR currency, and we need to be mindful of the local regulations, right? If we say we want a profit, a passion to profit project, it shouldn't just tell us that, hey, this is a project that works like in US, for example, right? Because we are in SA, we want to build something for the South African market, and the environment, the context is different from what the US market would need, right? So that's why like narrowing really helps giving the direction for the AI, right? um yeah, so this is just a more like a well explained example of the Risen framework, right? I'm not really going to jump into that. But sometimes we don't necessarily need to use the Risen framework all the time, right? Some certain tips that really like take you a long way in prompting is, firstly, you need to craft effective prompts. You need to provide sufficient context. You need to provide a good format and structure. You want to be as specific as possible, right? And you can actually use AI to help you craft the prompt, right? So that is something that you can do, right? Cool. So this is an example of a user flow that I've that this actually whole presentation was created by AI, by the way. So this is a passion to profit user flow that it created for me, where um, a user can list their hobbies and passions. They can find profitable opportunities, and then the AI matches the passions with a viable business model, and then it generates passion aligned business plan, right? So this is an interesting flow that it has given us, right? Flow 2 says that a user can select interested categories, then the AI analyzes market gaps and opportunities, and then it suggests 5 to 8 passion based business ideas, and then the user selects an idea and receives a detailed plan, right? So I think this is something that is actually very interesting. But I think for the purpose of this project, we'll keep it as simple as possible, right? And I think we'll use like a tool to just help us plan this out, right? So this is an example tool that I use very often. It's known as Excalidraw. So this is something that just kind of helps you, like if you have a brain dump, if you have a whole bunch of ideas, it kind of just helps you put things into perspective, right? So we're basically going to jump into the planning phase now, right? So basically, what we're trying to build over here is a simple passion. So we can just type the text first. So we're trying to build a simple passion to profit project, okay? And in this project, we basically want to be able to input a certain idea, right? So we basically have like a text area where we can put down an idea. Well, actually not idea, more like hobbies and passions. right? So for example, if you're into gardening, hey, I'm passionate about gardening, so we can have that input. But sometimes, we're lazy, we don't really want to type a whole input, right? So maybe we also want to have like a section where you can select like pre-selected chips, right? So we can have like certain small buttons, a list of buttons, right, where we can basically have like passions and hobbies listed, right? So something like this. Let's see. Something like this, right? So you can have passion one, you can have passion two, passion three, you can have a whole bunch of passions like this. So for example, yeah, something like that. We can have like gardening, singing, dancing, cricket. You can have like a pre-selected list, and then the moment you select an item, it could get populated over here, and that's basically kind of how you can populate the idea. Well, like your hobbies, and then you can expand on it in this text area over here, right? And we could basically have a button um, to just generate the idea. Okay, so that should be very interesting. Uh, and then once the idea is generated, we kind of want to show a few things, right? So the structure is something um, that can change, right? We're just kind of brain dumping our ideas over here. So maybe we want to have a summary section of the idea. So what exactly the idea is about. Maybe we want to know an idea of what the pricing is going to be, and then we want to maybe know what the um, projections are going to be, right? So like in year one, how much could we earn? In year two, how much could we earn? Something like that, right? So this is something that's just going to help us create some kind of like a basic version of a business plan, right? Something that will give us like uh, some kind of output that will help us look at the idea and actually execute on it, or give us a picture of, hey, if I execute on this, how much could I potentially earn, and like why is it a good idea, right? So maybe we also want to have like an idea of who our competitors are, right? And maybe we want to have a section of like why will this succeed, right? Maybe we can have that at the end, so something like this, right? Then we can have the idea on this side, we can generate the um we can generate the passions on this side, and then when we generate the idea, it can basically spit out like some kind of business plan, right? So yeah, I think that's something that works. Let's see, do we have anything in the comments, any ideas, guys, like anything that you guys would like to see, something that we could do differently here? Drop it in the comments. All right. But yeah, I think this is basically going to be the kind of structure that we're looking at. So maybe we could actually jump into our editor now, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new folder on my desktop. So whatever you're using, whatever computer you're using, you can create a new desktop. I'm going to call it webinar, right? And inside of this, actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag and drop this folder into cursor like this, right? And you can see cursor has opened up for me over here. um, if you've already installed it, you should be able to see something like this, right? And you can see that the webinar folder is open. I'm just going to zoom in a little bit, so you can see the webinar folder is open at the top left, and then on the right side you can see this chat window, right? So this is where we're actually going to be chatting to the AI to build this for us. Okay, so this should be very, very interesting, right? And now maybe we can actually talk to the AI to ask it about the idea and ask it to give us ideas, because we kind of have an idea of what we're trying to achieve over here, right? But maybe obviously the AI might have more ideas, and it can help us fine tune the idea, right? So you can see that over here there's something known as agent, right? Agent mode, and then we can actually go into something called ask, right? Ask mode. So if you're in agent mode, this is basically like your AI coding agent that will actually write code for you, read through multiple files for you, and it can also run something known as the terminal for you, right? So these are things that, again, if you were a developer, I think it would be a lot more easier to pick these things up, right? But basically, it's just the environment that Cursor provides us to build these applications, right? So you can see that if we select this Claude 4 Sonnet, there's multiple options over here, right? There's Claude 4 Opus, there's O3, Gemini 2.5, GPT 4.1, and you can see we can even add more models if we want, right? So I think in today, like in this day and age, I think Claude 4 Sonnet might actually be the best coding LLM, right? So it's like LLM meaning large language model. So there's like Claude, which is by Anthropic. Then there's Gemini, which is by Google. Then there's O3, which is by OpenAI, ChatGPT, right? So I personally think that O3 is very good for strategizing ideas, right? And then when it comes to execution, Gemini 2.5 is 2.5 Pro is really good. And also Claude 4 Sonnet is also really, really good, right? So I hope that gives you like an idea of the different models that are available over here. I know it might feel like a lot, but once you know these basics, you can get really far with just text, right? Cool. So what where we're at now is we kind of understand the environment, right? We have the chat over here. We're inside our webinar folder, okay? And now we can actually jump into the brainstorming, right, of the idea, right? We can continue our planning and brainstorming session, right? And now we can actually start prompting the AI, right? So I'm not going to use the Risen framework. I'm just going to try to be as specific as possible, right? Maybe we can use some components of the Risen framework, right? So let's actually try this, right? So the role. So the role over here is basically you are an expert product strategist that is you're an expert product strategist with lots of expertise on building successful SaaS products, right? So SaaS is actually software as a service, right? The full form of software as a service. Um, then the instruction over here could be that um, help me craft an implementation plan for the passion profit project I want to build, right? So there's actually other prompt frameworks that can be used, right? Here in steps, I wonder what we can put down. Maybe we can just say that um, uh, here is the idea I have so far. By the way, you don't have to put these. The AI will get confused on what R, S, and I is. Here's the idea I have so far on the UI. Okay, so something that I've learned recently, guys, sometimes, when you type, you might miss certain things, right? So what I'm actually going to do is I'm actually going to speak to the AI, right? So there's this tool called Super Whisper that you can use, right? And you can talk to the AI, right? So Super Whisper is just like a speech to text tool. So for example, if I do option space, I can actually start talking now, right? And then if I do option space again, you can see that almost instantaneously it's put down exactly what I said, and it put it down pretty accurately, right? Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about the idea that we have created so far, all right? Cool. So I actually want to build a passion to profit project, right? Um, on this page, on the landing page, I want to basically have an input where a user can basically enter their passion or their hobbies, right? I also want to have chips, right? Badges which can be clicked on so that it can populate the input. So the chips can basically be a range of um, hobbies and passions, maybe about like 9 or 10 of them, right? so that a user can pre-select it. So you can choose which nine of them they are. And then when the input is populated, when you select the chip, I want to be allow the user to enter further instructions on that input. And once they've entered their input and the user is happy with their input, there has to be a button on this page where they can actually generate the idea. So the button can be called generate idea. Once they click on generate idea, we can use the OpenAI API key to do a web search to see what kind of business idea, like what kind of SaaS product they can actually build, depending on what their passions and hobbies are that they have entered. So we want to have like a basic business case, right? Like a basic business case. We want to basically talk about, an executive summary of what the idea is, potential pricing. We also want to talk about competitors. We want to talk about projections and maybe other aspects of a business plan that we can include over there. So this is the idea that I have so far. Okay, so I think it's processing it, and bam. Cool. So that was a lot of talking, but I think we didn't miss any detail, right? And what you could do is you could actually clean this input, but I'm just going to leave it as it is, right? And we can actually proceed on to the next part, right? Um, cool. So I think we can actually also just talk about E and N. So E is basically the end goal. So maybe the end goal here is just evaluate this idea and help me solidify solidify it. And then maybe some narrowing over here can be the idea has to become a billion rand idea with great if well executed. It has to be based in South Africa, only use ZAR. What else do we have to narrow down on? Let's see. So I think that's it, right? I can't seem to think of anything else we can narrow down on. Um, yeah, help me solidify it. Maybe we need to be specific with the end goal. Come up with a project context.md document. So actually, this is actually the next part over here, right? So there's certain documents that you can ask the AI to create for you, right? This is something you have to be very aware of. One of the biggest problems with using anything like Lovable, Cursor, Windsurf is that AI has a limited context window, right? So what that means is that after after typing a whole bunch of requests, um, the AI is unable to process the messages well enough, right? So you have to start a new chat, right? In Cursor, there will come an option to start a new chat. I'll show you guys what that looks like. But when you start the new chat, AI loses its memory, right? It loses its context. This is actually one of the biggest problems with AI is just memory, which is why Sam Altman and all these guys are actually trying to figure out how to fix this memory problem. And I think we're actually making some good progress on it, right? Like I think Cursor also stores memory now, and we can explicitly ask it to store certain things in memory, so it can be used in later chats, right? But I think to avoid a scenario where we've kind of lost context, something that is very popular to do is to create like a product requirements document, right? And this product requirements document will pretty much just describe what the user stories are, what the acceptance criteria is, and any technical specifications, right? So this is kind of like what you would actually give to a developer, right? To before they actually start developing it, a product manager would basically say that these are the different user stories. So here's an example, right? As an entrepreneur, I want to input my business idea and receive a researched plan. So a user story is basically to say that this is what a user should experience, right? And then this is user story two. As someone who is exploring opportunities, I want to see trending business ideas, right? Then there's something known as acceptance criteria. By the way, guys, this is actually part of what product management is about. Um, the acceptance criteria here is we accept up to input up to 500 characters. The web search has to happen in 15 seconds or less. The plan generation has to happen in 30 seconds and must return 5 to 8 business trending business ideas. So these are things that we can ask it to do, right? So what we could actually do right now is we can actually ask it to generate this product requirements document. That can be the end goal for the AI, right? So we can say come up with the project requirements.md file, which basically has these things, right? And then the technical stack, right? So I had a look at what Lovable creates. Normally, they create React Vite applications. Again, guys, like if you know full stack development, all this is so much more easier. Even if you've just built one app, it can take you such a long way. I think the whole no code thing can get a little overwhelming if you're unaware of certain concepts, right? So yeah, with the we'll be using React Vite. We'll just use Tailwind CSS, which is like a styling library. We'll use OpenAI's API to conduct the searches, and then there's something known as Serper API, which we can use for searching the web, right? By the way, I've been using this word API as if everyone might know what it is, but let me just clarify. API full form is basically application programmable interface, right? What this basically means is that um, it, like for example, if we use the OpenAI API, we can basically send a request to OpenAI, and OpenAI can send us a response. If I have to draw like an analogy for it, it's like a scenario in a restaurant, right? So in a restaurant, you basically you have like a wish, you want to order something, so you would basically tell the waiter that, hey, I want to order something, right? Then the waiter is basically going to take the order to the kitchen and then actually bring the food for us, right? So that's what the API. So well, once it's in the kitchen, it does some kind of processing. As a customer, we don't know what processing is happening there. We don't know. It's kind of like a black box for us. But then finally, the food comes to us. That's what we care about as a customer. So that's exactly how the API works. So, like the AI that's actually happening here is that we're going to give OpenAI a prompt, like a set of instructions. Then OpenAI is going to basically do some sort of processing on their side, and then they're going to return like a response for us, right? Which is basically the business idea. Okay, so it's actually not very difficult to build like AI powered applications these days because OpenAI has their own APIs, right? Cool. So yeah, this is going to be really interesting. I don't think we'll get to the point of deployment, but let's see how far we get. All right. We're still in the planning phase. We should probably try to ramp things up faster. Okay, so let's see if it can create the project requirements document for us. And now I'm in the ask mode, right? When you're in the ask mode, if you try to ask it to create a file, it won't be able to do it. So I'm going to go back into agent mode, right? And I'm going to change our strategist to O3, right? Because remember, you're an expert. We've told the AI you're an expert product strategist. Okay, so let's go. Let's see what it creates for us. So you can see it shows us the thought process, like it's crafting the implementation plan, and it showed us the final output. Okay, if you want to actually see the thought process, you can just click there to see what the AI thought through. So here is a consolidated implementation plan and a draft project requirements.md. Okay, it looks like it's creating this whole thing for us. All right, so it didn't actually create this into the project requirements document. Let's ask it to create project requirements.md showcase the above, right? We want to basically store, remember we had this whole context problem. We always want to be able to store this into certain files so that we could always refer to them later, right? If ever we're stuck with anything. So you can see it's thinking and it's actually creating. You can actually look through the thought process. And it says I'm working on the file creation for project requirements. I want to ensure I get it right. I'll use the earlier content to replicate what's needed and format it down into Markdown correctly. All right. Cool. So you can see that it's done, right? I think it's almost done. There we go. Yeah. Project requirements has been added to the repository with the full product requirements document. Um, Passion to profit platform. Let me know if you have any tweaks or further breakdowns. Okay. So let's see what it has created for us. It's created a vision. So obviously we want this product to actually start making money, right? And then you can see it's created like the feature descriptions for us. This is the landing page plus passion input, and then there's a text input with 9 to 10 clickable chips. So exactly what we spoke about, right? It kind of put down the features over here. There's the generate idea. So normally, like anytime before you get into code, you want to get the planning right? So you'd want to go through this document and you'd want to make sure that everything is accurate. Okay. So you can see for auth, it's chosen to use Supabase as the database. For AI, it's going to use GPT-4o or GPT 3.5 Turbo. So these are like versions of GPT that we can use. For data enrichment, it's suggesting to use the Rapid API SERP, right? Um, but maybe for data enrichment, we want to use something else, right? Maybe we want to see if I know that OpenAI also has a web search tool. So to avoid using many APIs, maybe we can use that, right? So we could what you could do here is you can actually highlight this whole line, and then when you do Command L, you can actually ask it a question, right? Does OpenAI have a web search we could use instead of the SERP API? So you can see it knows that I'm referring to line 71 only. And when I ask it the question, it's going to check what I'm referring to. Okay. You can see it selected Next.js for basically creating the project. Wow, it's like really uh, technical, all this stuff, Prisma, payments, PDF generation, CI/CD observability, right? So there's a lot of ways we can go about this and try simplify this, right? Um, so So you can see it does not have a search the web or SERP endpoint. Okay. Um, in product browse with Bing tool is only for Chat GPT. It isn't exposed to the developer API. Okay, so we might actually have to resort to using the SERP API. So we'll just stick to that, right? So for payments, we'll just say for this version, we don't want payments. Okay. And we want to remove all this for this project. We want to keep it as simple as possible. We only want to have the front end, right? So for the key tech choices, we only want to use React plus Vite only front end, right? So we'll only build the front end in this project. Okay. We're going to basically remove all these as well, right? We're not going to set up payments. And yeah, like we're going to stick to using OpenAI and SERP basically for doing this certain things. Okay, so I think we need to actually highlight the whole file. We don't want to implement a backend. We simply want to do the front end only with the search, right? Yeah. Instead of Next.js, let's use React plus Vite. Okay, so this is what happens, right? Like you kind of have to do a back and forth to the AI to get exactly what you're looking for, right? So this planning, as you can see, is a very detailed process. Like it does take time. You can see that it also created target personas for us, which is really cool. And all these different areas need to be looked at properly, and it needs to be properly planned before you actually develop the idea, right? Like I can't emphasize this enough. Your planning has to be on point. Okay. So let's see what it creates for us. Okay, I think it still kept the the high level diagram over here. All right, cool. So see, now once you have your project requirements, there's other things that I'd actually recommend, right? Based on the project requirements, you want to come up with like an implementation plan.md file, right? But due to the time constraints we have right now, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to jump into development with the project requirements, which is risky, by the way, guys. I highly recommend that you thoroughly plan things out. Um, to avoid confusions, I'm just going to get rid of this. We only want to keep the key tech choices as this. Okay, cool. So yeah, I think that's one of the things, guys. Don't blindly just trust the AI, because AI does get things wrong sometimes. Okay, so now I'm going to start a new chat, and we're going to change to Claude 4 Sonnet. Okay, and we're just going to say, help me build this front end React plus White, sleek UI, not too many colors, keep it minimally aesthetic, use some animations, Is there any other instructions? I think that's pretty much it. Something else that I like to do is, if you are stuck with anything, do not assume, definitely ask, do not hallucinate. So that's also another problem that AIs tend to make, is that they hallucinate. So this is like a key important part of prompt engineering, right? Hallucination is basically like making things up, like they make things up sometimes. All right. So let's see how it goes, right? We're going to try and build this thing. Let's see if there's anything happening here. Okay, so I can see there's questions over here. What's the name of the tool? I think you guys were referring to like the tool I used for the speech. So for the speech to text, right? It's actually called Super Whisper. It's something that has actually helped me a lot in just speaking to the AI a lot more faster, right? Like these days, like AI has become such an incredible, integral part of development. Okay, cool. So something that you might be wondering over here, like how's the AI doing everything over here, right? So if you go to settings, there should be an option where, um, like it won't ask, like it's known as YOLO mode, right? But basically, if you don't enable it, it will basically, yeah, auto run mode, right? So if you have this disabled, at every step it's actually going to ask you before executing, right? So that is something that you can also do, right? But in this day and age, I think it's just, like AI has gotten to the point, like with Claude 4 and any new LLM updates that come, it's able to actually safely run, right? So the reason why auto run mode is like really risky, is because sometimes it might change things that were working and it suddenly starts breaking, right? So that's why you got to be super super careful, with auto run mode. Okay. Also, with auto run mode, if you give it like permissions, to delete your folders, it could delete folders without your permission, and I feel like that's the most risky thing. You want to know what AI is deleting actually, right? Um, so you can see basically I prevent the agent from deleting files automatically, because I'm scared that it might delete something that's important, right? But if you disable this, it'll automatically start deleting stuff, right? I think another concept, like while the AI is creating the project for us, another concept I'd love to share with you guys is actually MCP tools, right? So basically, MCP stands for Model Context Protocol. It's like a standard that was created by Anthropic, right, to basically help us access. It's like giving AI hands, right? If you think about AI, it's like a mind, right? It can think through things. So you ask it a question, it'll think about it, it'll give you an answer, right? What MCP tools does is it gives the AI hands to do things for you, right? So for example, I use the Superbase MCP a lot, right? Where I literally ask the AI, hey, do you mind just deleting this from the database for me? Or hey, create this new table in the database for me. And just by asking it to do stuff, it can actually use its hands, its tools to go perform actions on your behalf, right? So I've been using MCPs a lot. It's actually pretty game changing, right? Um, there's the Context 7 MCP, which I highly recommend for just development work, right? So one of the major problems with large language models is that they tend to um, like there's a cutoff date for every LLM, right? So if I open a new tab over here, I can ask it a question, right? What's your cutoff date? So what I'm basically asking is I'm asking Claude 4 Sonnet, what's your cutoff date? Because every LLM has a certain date until which the data has been trained, right? So you can see my knowledge cutoff date is April 2024, right? So after April 2024, this AI has no idea what's happening after that, right? So that's why tool like Context 7 is an MCP tool that allows you to access the documentation for certain tools that you're using at a particular time or particular version, right? So when you give AI full freedom to develop stuff for you, it tends to make a lot of mistakes with versions because things are constantly changing. Something that was working last year is suddenly broken this year because versions change, right? So what Context 7 MCP does is you can ask it to, hey, use the latest documentation or use this specific version of documentation to build this feature, right? I don't think we'll be using it in this project, but I think that's something powerful. And then the Playwright MCP is something that allows the AI to actually like open a browser and perform actions on your behalf, right? So maybe I can do a quick demo of how the Playwright MCP works. You can just ask over here. Use the Playwright MCP to open Zaio.io. Speaking of which, guys, at the start of this session, I basically said we have a surprise plan for you guys. So if you've hung around up until now, we have a really exciting gift for you, right? You'll basically get a 2,000 Rand off discount, okay? And this is for the upcoming boot camps, okay? And this is specifically because you have made it, up until this point over here, right? And this is basically a 2,000 Rand discount on our bootcamp price. And this is applicable only for the next 24 hours. So probably by tomorrow night, this discount will no longer be applicable. So definitely take advantage of this. Pretty big discount, 2,000 Rands. But we want to see more and more people gain this expertise. We've filled our courses with a lot of updates. We're trying to stay up with the times. It's such an interesting time to basically build applications. Cool. So okay, so I think there's a problem with our MCP. I'm just going to stop that because we don't need that right now. But basically, you can see that there's a certain limit on the number of tools that you can have on uh, on your application. So I'm just going to switch off my Superbase tool and let me ask it: do you have access to the Superbase to the Playwright MCP? So you can see that our project is still being developed. I'm not coding it right now. It's just creating it for us. And we're just going to take a back seat. So it does say that I do have access to the Playwright MCP. I have access to a comprehensive set of Playwright tools. Also, something just happened over here. I can see that the AI tried to do npm run dev, right? And it says that there was a missing script dev. So I think it'll autocorrect that. I think the AI is almost done with development. But just to wrap up what we were doing here, are you able to use the Playwright MCP to navigate to Zaio.io? So you can see. Oh, okay, okay. Yeah. So actually, you do require Playwright to be installed in your computer to use the MCP, but we're just going to skip that for now, right? Because we want to focus on our project. But basically, what this does is it can actually open the browser for you and it can test stuff for you. Okay. Cool. So what I'm going to do now is we're going to actually see what has been developed. So you can see that the AI says that we've created the landing page, we've created the navigation bar, we've created the dashboard, we've created the report viewer. It's included the TAM, SAM, SOM, right? So TAM is basically total addressable market, SAM is sellable addressable market, and SOM is sellable obtainable market, right? So it's like very fancy stats, but basically everything seems to be done, right? So it says, would you like me to show you how to integrate specific APIs or add any additional features, right? So I think everything is done according to what we expected, right? If I see the files on the left over here, we can see that there's a front end folder, and I think the project is inside the front end folder. So since I'm a developer, I actually know how to run this project. But then if you have no coding expertise, you should ask it, right? How do I start this project? So that's the thing. Like, I think if you don't have certain understanding of certain topics like API and any fancy jargon that doesn't make sense, I think asking it questions can help a lot, right? Um, One of the things though with Claude 4 specifically, it just has a tendency of doing things. So sometimes I recommend going on ask mode so that you can actually only get an answer that you want, right? You don't want it to just start running it for you, right? Here it might actually start running it for us. You can see it's running the command. It's seeding into the front end. So what that means is it's going into the front end file and then it's running the server. All I asked is how do I start the project, but it actually went on and started the project for me. So in this case, it works. It's helpful. But in other cases, you might not want it to go overboard and just do things for you, right? You only want it to do what you ask it to do, right? So in that case, I think Claude Force on it is a bit extra, right? So what I can do is I can move this to the background, and if I click on this link, you can see it opens this up. And we can see that there's errors, right? I don't think it's the one shot worked. So it says it does not provide an export named default. Okay. So by the way, how did I open this? All I did is I went and inspect and it opened this for me. And you go to the console. Again, guys, if you learn the full stack, how full stack development works, these are things that you will already know, and you can leverage AI to kind of do things for you a lot faster, right? So this is a strange issue. Like one shot didn't work. So let's see what it says. So I've just pasted the error over here and it will hopefully resolve this error. So if we go into source, you can see that it says that in this line there's an error. In app.tsx, there's an error. So yeah, I think that's another thing, guys. Like in development, errors are a very natural part of development, right? And to expect AI to get things right in the first shot might not be the best, right? And that's why, again, just emphasizing that it helps a lot to have like a full stack developer knowledge to actually use these no code tools, right? um, the thing is, Cursor is actually cheaper to use than something like Lovable, because I think in Lovable you get charged a lot of like for every request it's a token, and it's a lot more expensive to build Lovable. That's why I prefer using Cursor. But as you can see, having some technical expertise might be a requirement for using it over here. So it's something to be aware of. So let's see. It says that the dashboard file is empty. Let me recreate it properly. Okay. So it seems to be creating it. And it's trying to run the server again, but it's already running. So what I can do here is you have an option to accept all the changes, right? Or if you click on this, you can see what files have been changed, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to accept all the changes, okay? And you can see that what it did is started a new server in 5174, but it was already running on 5173, right? So if I just refresh the page, you can see that something appears, right? But I think something's wrong with the styles. The styles have not appeared properly, right? So what we could do here is now we can actually take a screenshot, okay? and we can ask the AI to fix this, right? There seems to be a problem with the styles. I'm unable to actually see all the styles appear. The UI looks very dull right now. Please fix the styles. Cool. So we have to just wait for it to fix it. I'm just going to close these files. But I think having that knowledge of how to, like, if you're able to build one application just on your own without AI, I think it becomes a lot more easier to use AI tools for development, right? So let's see. It's a bit slow right now. Yeah, so this is what it kind of created. But you see, if I click on all the different things, it shows me, like, um, the input, and then we could generate an idea, right? So let's say I've selected gaming. Obviously, I think like another idea over here is when we select any of these chips, it should like populate the input in more detail, right? It shouldn't just show the word technology, right? But let's say I'm into fitness and I generate business plan. Let's see what happens here. So nothing seems to have worked here. Let's just see the inspect. Okay, so I guess it worked, right? Because it does say generated idea for fitness, but now we got to like continue to prompt it to continue building on top of this, right? So it seems to have some issues with Tailwind for styling. So let's see how it goes. It's doing like some configuration over here. I think a popular recommendation I've seen, right, um, from some influencers is actually starting off your project in something like Lovable, right? Because I think you have a free tier and you can actually get some number of requests through. And once you've got a certain version, taking that to Cursor, because in Cursor you have a little more control over the code, you have a little more control over what's actually happening, and that allows you to maintain and build on top of existing features, right? I think a challenge that I've heard people face in Lovable, something like Lovable, right, is basically at some point a feature works, and then when you prompt it again, um, that particular feature that was working kind of stops working, right? So, and hence I believe that coming to Cursor for like expanding your project is a great idea. But either way, you can see that, like, yes, you can actually build no solutions with no code, but having coding expertise makes the whole process so much more painless, right? And I think a lot of employers today, they actually look to hire individuals that have some kind of coding experience, but most importantly are able to use AI tools to be a lot more productive, right? So I feel like we're not at the stage where we can replace developers, right? We still, if not, at this point of time, developers are probably the most important people because these guys know how to maneuver all these different tools to get the best outcomes and best outputs, right? So one of the things that I like to do is actually pay attention to what the AI is changing, but we're kind of just letting it go right now. So let's see how things go. So it says that the styling issues have been fixed. And here is what it did. It gives us like a nice summary of what it has done. And it says your app should now look amazing with beautiful gradiented text, properly styled buttons, clean white cards, and so on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on accept all, and I'm going to refresh this page. And damn, like I can see that it's still not working, right? So we might be stuck in a loop now, right? And at this point is where like your coding expertise might help a lot, right? uh, I can see the UI is still not working. Is there anything I need to do to make it work? Refer to the screenshot. Yeah, in fact, it kind of made things worse. Hey, um, looks like the animations seem to be working, but the components are just not loading properly, I guess. So let's see what AI can do for us. So I think normally what happens is when the conversation gets very long, right? The AI also tends to get a lot more slower, right? Because the way it works is that it takes in input tokens, right? Input tokens are basically like instructions, and then it provides an output, right? But as the chat increases, the input token size is increasing, so it just takes longer to process it, right? So in such cases, I would actually recommend to start a new chat so it responds a lot more faster, right? Okay, so it seems to have started a new server. So I'm just going to move that to the background, and we can run this and we can see what happens. And oh, we can see that it's throwing us another error, right? So you can see that starting a project with no code can throw a lot of challenges. And I think as somebody who has no coding experience, this might actually be so intimidating, right? Wow. Let's see. Okay, so it seems to be still fixing some things like the import errors. I don't think it's actually done with fixing stuff. So it does recognize that some Tailwind directives didn't work properly. So it is changing how the import is happening. Okay, so at this point, something that might actually be helpful is to tell the AI to actually use context 7 to access the right documentation for Tailwind so that it kind of knows how to handle the imports. Because I can see what's happening is that something is wrong in the configuration of Tailwind. I think that's the reason why it's breaking. I can see that we're actually above time for this webinar. I hope we can just do this for another 5 to 10 minutes so we can actually uh, leave this place having built something that's working. I can see another question here. What is the name of the tool you used for planning the project? Okay, so I actually use something known as Excalidraw, right? This is something that's really helpful for like brain dumps. So I recommend that. Sweet. So we can see that the AI still I haven't sent these instructions yet because I think it was still fixing stuff, right? Um, so you can see that it's actually going through multiple options, right? It's saying that maybe we need to do an alternative Tailwind setup, and this is where Tailwind isn't working. So I think this brings me to like a hack that you guys should implement in your project, especially with Cursor, and that's known as Cursor rules, right? You can actually set up Cursor rules to just give your AI direction on how to go about doing installations, what versions to use, and this whole process could have been avoided, right, if you knew what kind of versions you want to work with, right? But as some, like, if somebody has no coding experience, they don't care about the versions, right? They just kind of want to build something that's working, and they're not really concerned about the versions, right? But if you did have some coding expertise, you could use Cursor rules to basically set what kind of versions that you want to work with, right? Cool. So it says that it's asking us to refresh the browser. It says do a hard refresh, so Control Shift R or Command Shift R on Mac, and then with the inline styles, it's added some stuff for us. And if it's still not working, try these additional steps. Clear the browser cache. So you clear your browser data history. Try an incognito. Check the developer console. So F12 for the dev tools. So that's kind of what we did already, which is inspect. But I can see that the errors are still appearing in our terminal. So this is probably not working, right? I'm going to run the server again, and I'm going to try click on this. And you can see that the error still happens, right? And it says that the dot slash base is specified in the Tailwind package, right? So at this point, you could actually use the MCP to say that, hey, just check the right documentation for the right implementation, and then it'll actually accordingly fix it. But let's see how it handles this. Okay, so it says, I see the issue. The problem is with the Tailwind CSS input syntax I have used. Let me fix this by reverting to the standard Tailwind directives. So it kind of went back to what it already did earlier. Let's see. The issue is likely that the version of Tailwind CSS we installed might not be compatible, or there might be a version mismatch. Let me check what version we have and potentially simplify our approach by creating a custom CSS file without Tailwind for now. So let me create a simpler approach with a comprehensive custom CSS file, which will give you beautiful styling immediately. All right, so guys, this is something that AI tends to do, right? So one of the things that we actually didn't specify in the project requirements. I don't think we specified it. We didn't ask it to install Tailwind, right? But it went ahead and did install Tailwind anyways, right? It's because we weren't specific enough with our stack, right? All we said is we want React and Vite, okay? So this is actually not a good thing. Like we should have actually specified what what styling library we want to use, okay? So what it's doing right now, it's completely removing Tailwind and it's using standard CSS, right? um, so you can see it's removed the Tailwind installs, and all it's doing is it's just going to use like standard CSS to run all the different functions, okay? So what I can do is I can click on accept all, right? And if I just close the server and I do npm run dev, yeah, you can see that we're still stuck with some errors here. So what I can do at this point is we could actually analyze the error if we have some coding expertise, but since it's a no code workshop, I want to try stay away from going into the code. So what I can ask it to do rather is still getting this error. Let's use direct CSS rather than Tailwind CSS. So yeah, these are issues that without proper setup you tend to encounter, and that's why, guys, I still think that it's important to actually have some kind of coding expertise so that you can navigate through these issues. If you have no coding expertise, all this can get very overwhelming very quickly, right? So what it's doing is it's deleting the files, right? Since I've asked it to use direct CSS, right? It's deleting all the Tailwind. So by the way, Tailwind is just like a styling library. We could still use Tailwind by importing it into our index.html, right? We could use Tailwind by importing the script over here. But again, if I didn't know how to code, I wouldn't know how to do that, right? Okay, so it started the server for us. Let's see what we got. Oh, cool. So I guess something came up, something worked, right? It's not yet done though. So something came up. It's not fully broken yet. So the idea does work. It says, turn your passion into profit, get a bank ready business plan, and go to market toolkit tailored for the South African market, all priced in ZAR, right? So you can see that it's giving us some stats over here, which will obviously help us sell such a solution. But you can still see that it's kind of broken. Like the UI doesn't look very clean. When I open the sidebar like this looks broken. So normally my go-to library in projects like this is shadcn, right? I like to use shadcn UI kit, well, shadcn components to basically help us build all these different Shatsi and UI to basically help us build all these components, like the UI components, a lot more faster. I'm sure you guys might have seen a lot of websites that look like this. It's like a very popular styling library. So that is something that I could have specified in the project requirements. This the exact like styling library I'd want to use, and our UI wouldn't look so bad, right? I think that this UI looks horrendous, but yeah, let's try generate a business plan and let's see what happens. Looks like nothing happens. Okay. So at this point, you would want to further prompt this to basically say that, hey, when I click on the generate business idea, it doesn't seem to work, right? Now, the way you prompt that would change a lot if you have coding experience versus you don't have coding experience, right? With some coding experience, what you could do is you could actually check the landing page, right? Or something I like to do is you can do like a global search over here, and you can actually search for where exactly this button is, generate business idea. Okay. So you can click over here and say generate business idea. So you can see it's in the landing page. And then over here, what you could do is you could select this, and then now we could actually say a prompt, right? Or we could type a prompt to basically say that, hey, when I click the general business idea, let's actually try it out, right? When I click the general business idea button, I actually wanted to generate the business plan. Currently, when I click on it, nothing seems to be happening. So I've kind of kept it very high level with this, but generally you want to be as specific as possible with the prompt, right? Like you want to tell it exactly what it has to do to generate the business idea. But we're just going to keep it high level and see how it goes. But yeah, I think this is a project which, in my experience of trying this right now with no code expertise, not using proper cursor rules, we didn't have sufficient time for planning. You can see that we haven't been able to produce ideal results, right? Which is why I still think that it's really important to actually have some coding expertise. Oh, I can see something here. There's like a dashboard where you can track the ideas that you create, and you can see that these are the recent ideas created. Like it's such a brilliant idea, actually. Like people could use something like this. People who don't have business ideas could use a tool like this to create a business idea, and come up with like a go-to market toolkit, right? But to make such a product come alive, it helps a lot to have some sort of coding experience, right? Which is why I really think the offer that we have right now, the 2,000 rand voucher, right, which is applicable for the next 24 hours. I think if you've stuck with us up until this point, definitely give it a go. The full stack expertise you have is invaluable, right? When it comes to building full stack applications, I think with no code as expertise, it's easy to build like landing pages where there's not much functionality happening. You can see that with a simple project, we faced so many hurdles because we kind of took the angle of no code over here, right? Like without looking into the code, without jumping too much into the technicalities, we kind of wanted to just type and get going, right? So I still think that we're very far away from being able to build full stack production ready applications for enterprises, for hundreds of thousands of users. I still think coding expertise is really crucial for that. So I think on that note, we could end the session over here. And I highly recommend that you join the full stack course. This was our attempt at doing no code, right? Um, if anybody is keen to continue this project, let me know, right? I'm happy to actually create a GitHub repo on this and share it with you guys. And if ever anybody is keen to continue working on this project, I think it's a really cool idea, right? And this is the coupon code, guys. Youth25. Do use the Youth25 code. It expires in 24 hours. And try your best, to use this. You get 2,000 rands off, and I think it's incredibly powerful right now to learn this skill. As you can see, we faced so many hurdles, right? If we used our full stack expertise from the get go, we could have gotten a lot more far in just 1 hour, right? So AI is not yet here to take away dev jobs. If anything, AI is here to make you a super powerful developer. So definitely use the coupon code. And once again, if you guys are keen to continue this project, definitely hit me up. You can message me on Discord, or you can email me. Preferably email akhil@zaio.io, and I'm happy to push this repo and share it with you guys. All right. um, so thank you so much, guys, for tuning in today. Right, I think our AI is still generating some stuff on the side over here. I'm gonna let it do that, right? But I hope you've walked away with some good knowledge, some good understanding of how no code works, right? Maybe we could do a different session where we actually test out and play around with Lovable and see how far we get with that, right? But I think code is here to stay. I still think it's really important to know how to code. I think it was very evident in the kind of hurdles that we experienced. So definitely sign up for Zaio. Thank you so much for chilling with us up until now. I feel a bit sad that we weren't able to get something tangible done, right? But that's why I think I'll see you guys on the inside, where you can actually do some full stack development. Of course, we'll be using these AI tools in our courses, right? So I can see Next Gen Academy says, I'm keen on seeing this project getting completed. Let's see if I can see more people actually requesting for this. Maybe I'll spend another couple of hours. Maybe I'll use some of my coding expertise to actually try to get this live. So definitely let us know, guys. Let us know in the comments. Thank you for staying around with us. It's been a good one. I'll see you guys in the next one.